questions, and obviously I haven't been available for like a week or so. So, first of all, I know what you guys are going to ask, and I did think it was a flagrant foul. And our reffing just needs to be better. And, it's tough. Obviously, the refs are in a really difficult spot. It's one of the hardest jobs in the world, in my opinion, is to make calls. All you do is get yelled at the whole time by everybody. You're never winning. So I think for us, as the league's just got to do better, protecting our players. Feeling a lot better, excited to get back into practice today, and then feeling really, really positive about getting back into one of the games at the back-to-back. Obviously, difficult coming back in a back-to-back, so we'll have to be cautious of that. But I feel a lot better, and like I said, excited to get back into practice. And this week has been very helpful for my overall health. So other than that, if you guys have any questions, I know I kind of just ranted for a while, but feeling a lot.
Okay, she said. Difficulty coming back in a back-to-back. She's missing.
There it is, the long-awaited acknowledgement of the flagrant foul. And pay close attention to how Caitlin Clark delivers it. If you followed her journey since her legendary days at Iowa, this response probably didn't surprise you at all. In fact, many people saw it coming from the moment the incident happened. She was always going to condemn the hate. She was always going to choose the diplomatic path instead of fueling the controversy. And, just as she has done throughout her career, she was always going to put others ahead of herself. But now let's revisit what actually unfolded on June 1st against the Chicago Sky. In one of the most shocking and obvious off-ball plays professional basketball has witnessed in years, Chindy Carter delivered a hard hip check to Caitlin Clark while the ball was nowhere near the play. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't accidental. It happened in plain sight, yet the officials failed to call it during the game. Only after the WNBA reviewed the footage was the foul upgraded to a flagrant one. Music. And the story didn't end there. In the aftermath of the incident, Carter took to social media and posted, "What does she bring to the table, man?" A remark that many fans interpreted as a direct shot at Clark. That single post only intensified the controversy and added fuel to an already heated debate surrounding the league. Now think about the situation Caitlin Clark finds herself in. She becomes the target of a blatant physical play. The player responsible publicly appears to mock her afterward. The incident dominates headlines, social media erupts, and emotions run high across the basketball world. Yet despite all of that, Clark's response isn't retaliation. It isn't anger. It isn't calling anyone out. Instead, she publicly condemns the online hate directed toward the very player who committed the foul against her. It's a reaction that leaves many people stunned. At a time when most athletes would understandably defend themselves or escalate the situation, Clark chooses restraint. Whether you see it as remarkable maturity or unbelievable selflessness, it's difficult to ignore the striking contrast between what happened on the court and how she chose to respond afterward. The disconnect is impossible to miss, and for many observers, it's one of the most extraordinary parts of this entire story.
We have to invest in those areas. The technology can get better. We can treat the referees a little bit better. Pay them like they're full-time employees. I think things like that. And, I think a lot has obviously come after that. And as I've stood up here and said before, like the harassment, the hate, none of that is okay. That goes for the opposing team we play. That goes for my teammates. That goes for my coaches. There should never be question of character. Like I've always stood up here and said that. And that's truly what I believe. That's how I was raised. So, none of that is okay. And I don't want anybody to ever experience that. I think it can be really frustrating to me at times. And I think it's difficult. I think a lot of people sometimes think I'm a robot. I'm not a robot. I have emotions. I have feelings. And it can be really difficult to go through a lot of that. And, I'm 24 years old trying to navigate a lot. And I think at times I've been in this world for 4 years now, and you would never change any of it. But there are times that it is hard, and there are times that, it probably affects me a little bit more than I do put on. And, I would never change any of that for the world. But I think it's important that people do remember that part of it too. So, at the same time, it's really interesting to me because, even I turned the TV on Sunday, and that game was on Wednesday, and that's all people are still talking about. And I feel like that's just a real disservice to our league. And I get it. You talk about it. You talk about whether it's flagrant. You talk about whatever it is.
This is where the story takes an even more fascinating turn. Caitlin Clark doesn't ignore the media frenzy surrounding the incident, but she addresses it in the most unmistakably Caitlin Clark way possible. Rather than making herself the center of the conversation, she shifts the focus to everyone else. I feel bad for the players that were playing in the games those days. I feel bad for my teammates. Those words reveal a lot about her mindset. Instead of talking about what happened to her, she's thinking about the players whose performances were overshadowed. She's thinking about her teammates who suddenly found themselves caught in the middle of a controversy they didn't create. Once again, she's putting others ahead of herself. But let's take a closer look at what she's really saying. The Chindi Carter incident took place on a Saturday. By the very next day, it had completely taken over the sports world. Nearly every major sports talk show in America was breaking it down, replaying the footage, debating the official's decision, and arguing over what it meant for the WNBA. The conversation had grown far beyond a single foul. It had become the biggest storyline in basketball, dominating headlines while countless other games, players, and performances were pushed into the background. And that's exactly what Clark is pointing to. Instead of complaining about the attention she received, she's expressing concern for everyone whose moment was overshadowed by the non-stop media storm. It's a response that perfectly reflects the approach she's become known for, measured, selfless, and remarkably composed, even when she's the one at the center of the controversy.
For the narrative to be taken other places that is really just that's just really not acceptable, I think it's hard to see, and it's a disservice to my team, but it's also a disservice to the other teams in this league and other players in this league. There's so much amazing talent, and there's so many amazing players that are playing at an incredibly high rate, and I remember, I think it was Sunday or Saturday, whatever day that was. I remember watching them discuss it on TV, and I didn't know they were going to discuss it. I was just watching the other games because I try to watch as much as I can, and I honestly felt bad for the players that were playing in the games those days, and also I felt bad for my teammates. They played on Friday, and they dominated, and they played really well, and nobody wanted to talk about that. They were just worried about everything else. So, and there had been, I think 10 plus other games that had already happened to that point. So, I think it's all of our jobs to help refocus the narratives a lot of the times, and we can do better at that. And I think it'll help our game.
We can't ever lose sight of that. The joy, the passion, and the excitement. That's why you play this game. Those words aren't accidental. They're Caitlin Clark's way of steering the conversation away from the endless controversy and back toward what truly matters. Instead of allowing the headlines, criticism, and constant debates to define her rookie season, she's determined to remind everyone of the bigger picture. She's trying to shift the narrative toward the moments that deserve to be remembered. The packed, sold-out arenas, the thousands of young fans showing up to watch women's basketball, the incredible energy inside every building, and the excitement that's surrounding the league like never before. That's the story she wants people to focus on. But then, she reveals something that speaks volumes. I remember seeing a headline. The season has been everything but fun and just full of frustration. That single headline perfectly captures the negativity that has followed her throughout much of the season. It's the kind of narrative that can easily overshadow everything else if you let it. Yet instead of embracing that version of the story, Clark quietly pushes back against it. She's reminding everyone that despite the physical play, the constant scrutiny, the media storms, and the never-ending controversy, the heart of the game hasn't changed. Beneath all the noise, there's still joy. There's still passion. There's still a love for basketball that can't be taken away. And perhaps that's the most revealing part of all. Even when the outside world seems determined to focus on conflict and frustration, Caitlin Clark refuses to let those moments define her season. She keeps bringing the conversation back to the game itself and to the reason she fell in love with basketball in the first place.
By the way, she gave exactly the statement I expected. All right, a very canned statement. She shot down online harassment and hate. I knew she would make this statement. There was no way with her having to play in this league with these players, there was no way she was not going to do the I'm condemning hate and online harassment, blah, blah, blah. She was always going to do that. All right. If anybody expected that she wouldn't, you were wrong.
Now, let's turn to the injury situation, because this is where the conversation becomes genuinely concerning for Indiana. Caitlin Clark has officially confirmed that she'll be sitting out Sunday's matchup against the Las Vegas Aces. For Fever fans, that's a difficult blow, especially considering how much the team relies on her presence and playmaking every time she steps on the court. But the concern doesn't stop there. The schedule ahead leaves very little room for recovery. Indiana is facing a demanding back-to-back stretch, with games on July 8th and July 9th against Phoenix. Those are the kinds of situations that can test even fully healthy players, making Clark's recovery timeline an even bigger question. And then she revealed something that immediately caught everyone's attention. She specifically acknowledged how difficult it is to return while playing in back-to-back games. That wasn't just a passing comment. It was an honest admission that her body isn't quite where she wants it to be yet. For Indiana, that's a serious concern. Every decision regarding her recovery has become increasingly important because rushing her back could create even bigger problems down the road. The Fever know they need their franchise star healthy not just for one game, but for the long haul. Now all eyes are on her recovery, as fans wait to see when she'll be ready to return at full strength. The hope is that patience now will ensure Clark comes back healthy, confident, and prepared to make the impact everyone knows she's capable of.
Look, you gotta say one thing. She's always thinking about everybody else but her. However, she did make it clear that was a foul. The league needs to do better. And of course, she tried to spin it towards the rest of the league too. But we knew this would happen. We knew that this would be the kind of statement she would give. She's always trying to, and here's the problem. She's such an unselfish person and player in what is a unbelievably selfish league, petty league and jealous league. And her personality could not be more opposite to her fellow players in the league.